1. Introduction. Friends, if you're excited to witness another round of immortal warriors, fierce battles, and jaw-dropping action sequences, then you're in the right place. Today we're diving deep into one of the most talked-about upcoming films, The Old Guard 2 *, set to release in 2025. If you're a fan of thrilling storylines, intense performances, and epic fight scenes, make sure to like this video. And if this is your first time on our channel, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out on exciting updates about movies, web series, and everything entertainment. In this video, we'll take a complete tour of what The Old Guard 2 has in store for us. We'll talk about the basic plot of the film, where it picks up after the first part, and how it raises the stakes. We'll also reveal where you'll be able to watch it, whether it will premiere on an OTT platform, be released in theaters, or broadcast on a satellite channel. We'll break down which is the best way to experience it in all its high-octane glory. That's not all. There's a lot more we're going to explore. From the technical team behind the scenes to the music score that sets the tone for every battle and emotional moment, we'll discuss how this film was crafted, who worked on it, and how the production moved from pre-production planning to filming and finally post-production. Curious about the budget and how much this film is expected to make? We'll cover all the numbers and box office projections too. And, of course, what's a good action movie without a compelling story? I'll give you a short, spoiler-free review of the storyline and discuss what makes this sequel different from the first part. We'll talk about returning characters like Andy, Booker, and Nile, and explore any new additions to the team. What's the new mission? What kind of enemies are they facing this time? And how do the emotional arcs of these immortal warriors evolve in this chapter? We'll also dive into the cast performances, who stood out, who surprised us, and how each character contributed to the story's development. Whether you're here to find out who's the villain, who delivers the best action scenes, or which characters you'll fall in love with all over again, we're going to unpack every detail. And just when you think that's all, there's more: behind-the-scenes trivia, lesser-known facts about the filming process, locations used, and the visual effects that bring the supernatural edge of the story to life. So, friends, make sure you stick around until the end of this video, because by the time we're done, you'll know everything you need to know about The Old Guard 2. It's going to be an exciting ride, so let's not waste any more time. Let's jump into the world of immortal heroes, betrayal, and redemption with The Old Guard 2. 1. Plot and narrative. So let's talk about the heart of The Old Guard 2, the story. Right from the opening moments, the film wastes no time plunging us back into the chaotic, gritty, and dangerous world of immortal mercenaries. But this time, things feel more personal, more haunted, and a lot more unpredictable. The story picks up after the events of the first film, with Andy no longer immortal. Yes, that twist from the end of part 1 still carries serious weight here. She's dealing with the terrifying realization of her mortality, while still leading a team that literally can't die. That dynamic alone adds a fascinating layer to the way decisions are made, especially when it comes to taking risks. But what truly sets this sequel apart is how it plays with perspective and time. We start seeing fragments of different characters' pasts, not just through flashbacks, but through the consequences those memories still have in the present. Booker, now back with the team, has to earn their trust again after betraying them. His arc is messy, raw, and full of friction. Then there's Nile, who's stepping into more of a leadership role, but still figuring out where she belongs in this timeless, blood-soaked family. The team dynamics are constantly shifting, and with new enemies emerging from unexpected corners, the sense of paranoia never lets up. The narrative doesn't follow a simple linear structure. It weaves in and out of timelines, bouncing between war-torn histories, shadowy betrayals, and secret alliances that stretch across centuries. One moment you're in a futuristic-looking lab with cutting-edge tech, and the next you're in a flashback to a medieval battlefield drenched in fire and grief. And just when you think you've figured out the rhythm, the story pulls you in another direction entirely. Key turning points come fast and hard. One early mission goes horribly wrong, and it becomes clear that the Immortals are being hunted again, but not just for their abilities. This time, There's a much deeper agenda at play involving an underground organization tied to one of the Immortal's long-lost enemies. That's where the emotional core of the story starts to hit. The past isn't just something these characters remember, it's something that literally comes back to haunt them. And yes, Quỳnh is back. The way her return is handled is chilling and powerful. Her dynamic with Andy is complex and painful, filled with old wounds and unanswered questions. The emotional conflict between them simmers throughout the movie, and it's never quite clear whether they'll reconcile or tear each other apart. What really keeps the narrative alive is how it blends brutal action with surprisingly intimate character moments. It's not just a story about immortals who can't die, it's about what it means to live forever. The boredom, the guilt, the exhaustion, the loss. There's a tragic poetry to the way time passes for these characters, and every battle they fight has a shadow from centuries before. But don't worry, it's not all somber and reflective. There are some major action set pieces that explode off the screen. Ambushes, betrayals, a prison break, and a final battle that feels like a cross between myth and modern warfare. Each one is tied directly into the narrative. There's no filler. Every explosion, every chase, every blade swung means something. So if you're thinking this is just a standard sequel with more fights and bigger stunts, think again. The Old Guard 2 experiments with how a story can unfold. It digs deeper, opens old wounds, and turns the idea of being an immortal warrior into something far more complicated than ever before. 1. Character development. Now, let's get into the real meat of the Old Guard 2, the characters. Because yes, the action is wild, the story is clever, but it's the people, well, immortals, that keep it all anchored. From the very first frame, it's clear that the film isn't just here to continue the journey, it's here to challenge the characters in ways they've never been pushed before. And that means real growth, real consequences, and a ton of emotional tension. Let's start with Andy. She was already a powerhouse in the first film, unstoppable in combat, weary with age, and quietly carrying centuries of pain. But this time, everything's different. She's mortal now. That small change transforms her entire arc suddenly. She's vulnerable not just physically, but emotionally. You feel her hesitation in battle, her fear of making the wrong call, her confusion about whether she still has a place among her own kind. Watching Andy navigate leadership while secretly dealing with doubt is one of the most compelling elements of the entire film. She's no longer just a leader by power. She becomes a leader through sheer will and wisdom. Then we have Nile. In the first film, she was the rookie, the wide-eyed Marine thrown into a centuries-old war. Now, she's battle-tested, more confident, and starting to question the very code the group lives by. Her arc is one of stepping into purpose, of choosing who she wants to be, not just what she was born into. Nile starts making decisions that shake the group, challenge Andy, and redefine what it means to be part of the Old Guard. Her leadership style is emerging, and it's not just physical strength, it's strategy, compassion, and defiance. Booker returns after being exiled for betraying the team, and wow, is his character arc messy in the best way. He's consumed by guilt, constantly trying to earn redemption, but it's not a straight path. The team doesn't just forgive and forget. There are confrontations, moments of silence, emotional standoffs, and a few scenes where you're not even sure if he's going to make it through. Booker's journey is all about accountability, and the film doesn't shy away from showing how betrayal scars relationships, even centuries-old ones. Now, let's talk about Quỳnh. Her reappearance flips everything on its head. She's not exactly the same Quỳnh that Andy once loved and lost. Centuries of being trapped in isolation have changed her. Her motives are unclear at first. There's rage, sorrow, longing, and something slightly unhinged. Watching her clash with Andy isn't just a battle of old friends, it's a storm of unresolved trauma. The emotional weight between them drives some of the film's most intense scenes. Her presence also brings new questions to the group about loyalty, about the cost of survival, and about how immortality twists even the strongest bonds. And the rest of the team, Joe and Nikki, they continue to be the emotional heart of the squad. Their relationship is solid, grounded, and filled with those quiet moments that remind you this isn't just a gang of warriors, it's a found family. But even they're tested this time around. As new threats rise and moral lines get blurred, they're forced to confront whether eternal life is worth it if you lose who you are in the process. Every character is layered, and no one walks away unchanged. There are arguments, alliances, sacrifices, and moments of reflection that hit harder because these aren't just heroes. They're people who've lived through ages of grief and still haven't figured everything out. Their motivations evolve with each decision they make, and those motivations collide in ways that constantly reshape the direction of the story. What makes this film truly special in terms of character development is that it doesn't just show growth through grand speeches or final acts. It shows it in hesitation, in side glances, in the way a character grips a weapon or chooses not to. It's in what they say and, more importantly, in what they don't say. So while the bullets are flying and the blades are clashing, what you're really watching is a deep, emotionally raw exploration of identity, purpose, loyalty, and legacy. These characters are mortal, but they're also painfully human. 1. Performances. Let's talk performances, because in The Old Guard 2, it's not just about the story or the action. It's about how the cast breathes life into these immortal warriors and makes you feel every wound, every decision, every regret. This isn't just a sequel that leans on big action sequences. It's powered by intense performances that hit with real emotional weight. Charlize Theron returns as Andy, and once again, she commands every frame she's in. But this time, it's not her physical dominance that defines her performance, it's her vulnerability. Charlize gives us a different Andy now. Gone is the unshakable warrior with the secret advantage of immortality. What we get instead is a woman grappling with fear, doubt, and something dangerously close to hope. There's a raw edge to her expressions, a quiet panic in her eyes, and a kind of restrained grief in the way she moves. Even in the middle of brutal hand-to-hand combat, her performance constantly reminds you that she's human now, and that change gives her the space to explore an entirely new emotional range. KiKi Layne, as Nile, completely steps up her game. She's no longer the newcomer with 1,000 questions. She's a force in her own right. There's something magnetic about the way she balances strength with empathy. She's bold, sharp, and emotionally layered. Her scenes with Andy are especially electric, sometimes clashing, sometimes mirroring each other, but always filled with tension. Whether she's leading a mission, confronting the weight of eternity, or just trying to figure out who she's becoming, KiKi makes Nile feel grounded and real. She doesn't just deliver lines, she commands attention. Matthias Schoenaerts as Booker gives one of the most emotionally complex performances in the film. Booker is haunted, and you feel every ounce of his regret in the way he speaks, the way he looks at his teammates, the way he flinches in conversations. His scenes are laced with quiet desperation. He's trying to make amends, but it's not as simple as saying sorry, and Matthias captures that inner conflict perfectly. He's carrying centuries of emotional weight, and it shows in every tired smile and every hesitant step. Then we have the returning duo, Marwan Kenzari as Joe and Luca Marinelli as Nikki, the emotional anchors of the team. Their chemistry is once again effortless and believable. You feel their bond in the smallest gestures, in how they look at each other, how they communicate mid-battle without a word, and how they react to the dangers threatening their makeshift family. Marwan brings a soulful strength to Joe, and Luca gives Nikki a blend of fierce protectiveness and quiet insight. They aren't just there to support the plot. They make the team feel like a living, breathing unit. And now, let's talk about Quỳnh, played with haunting intensity by Veronica No. Her return flips the energy of the film, and Veronica delivers a performance that's both beautiful and unsettling. She has very few lines in the beginning, but her presence alone shifts the tone. Her rage is layered, not explosive. Her hurt, carefully restrained until it boils over. The way she interacts with Andy is some of the most emotionally charged material in the film. You're never quite sure whether she's a friend, a threat, or both, and Veronica plays that ambiguity with incredible precision. The supporting cast also steps up. Whether it's new antagonists or members of shadowy organizations, there's not a single flat performance. Everyone is tuned into the emotional stakes of the film. Even the villains aren't cardboard cutouts. They're performed with charisma, menace, and a surprising amount of nuance. What makes the performances in The Old Guard 2 so powerful is that they're never just about delivering cool lines or looking good in fight scenes. The emotional stakes are etched into every reaction, every hesitation, every fight. It's about people, yes, even immortal ones, grappling with love, loyalty, fear, and change. This cast doesn't just act. They live their characters, and that's what makes every moment hit harder than expected. 1. Direction. Now, let's talk about the real captain of this ship, the director. Because when it comes to The Old Guard 2, every frame, every shift in mood, every narrative twist carries the signature of someone who clearly knows how to handle chaos with style and emotion. The direction here doesn't just guide the film, it defines it. From the very first shot, you can feel that this isn't just a sequel playing it safe. There's a bolder energy, a tighter focus, and a more ambitious visual language. The tone is darker, but not without hope, and the pacing feels more urgent, like time is finally catching up to people who were once outside of it. The director leans heavily into the emotional weight of immortality. And instead of letting that idea sit quietly in the background, they push it right to the front. Through subtle pauses, through silent glances between characters, through the rhythm of the editing and the framing of the action, the direction constantly reminds you that this is a story about people who've seen too much, lost too much, and are still expected to keep moving. There are moments when the camera lingers just a little longer than expected, not on the action but on what happens after it. A hand trembling, a character staring into nothing, a quiet breath before the next fight. Those moments? Pure direction. Visually, the film plays with contrasts. There's a rough, grounded texture to the close combat scenes, gritty lighting, handheld shots, sudden bursts of movement. But when the story shifts into flashbacks or dreamlike memories, everything changes. The lighting softens. The camera floats. Time feels different. These visual shifts aren't just for style. They help you feel what the characters are feeling, moving between trauma and memory like flipping through centuries in seconds. And the fight scenes? Absolutely crafted. These aren't just action sequences thrown in for spectacle. The director choreographs them like they're conversations, with tension, hesitation, and emotional beats. Each movement is tied to character and story. There's a moment in a rain-drenched alley where the fight isn't just about survival, it's about rage, betrayal, and buried pain. And instead of cutting rapidly, the camera follows the characters with fluid, intimate tracking shots, so you're not watching a fight, you're inside it. Pacing-wise, there's a deliberate rhythm to how the story unfolds. It's not a constant sprint. It breathes. It builds. You get these moments of stillness between explosions, and that's where the emotional punches land the hardest. The director understands that without those quieter moments, the chaos wouldn't matter. So you get character scenes that feel like short, intimate dramas, just two people talking, but layered with centuries of context, and the direction makes sure you feel the weight of every word. Stylistically, the film isn't afraid to experiment. There are time jumps, flashbacks, and even scenes that overlap emotionally rather than linearly. One character walks through a modern corridor, but the lighting shifts and suddenly you're seeing echoes of their past bleeding into the present. It's subtle, but powerful, and it all flows together because the director knows how to weave narrative threads without letting the pace fall apart. Even the transitions between scenes feel designed to reflect mood. A quiet emotional confession cuts to a war zone. A moment of connection fades into the chaos of betrayal. You're constantly being pulled between beauty and brutality, and that tension is what gives the film its pulse. The director orchestrates this like a symphony, highs, lows, and everything in between, building toward a climax that's both explosive and intimate. The vision behind The Old Guard 2 isn't just to continue a story, it's to deepen it, sharpen it, and push it into darker, more human territory. Every stylistic choice, from the composition of a single frame to the pacing of an entire act, feels intentional. This isn't just a film about immortals. It's a film about what it means to live with consequence, and the director makes sure you feel every beat of that through the lens. 1. Cinematography. Let's get into the visual soul of the old guard too, the cinematography. Because this film doesn't just tell you a story, it shows it with such intensity and style that you feel like you're living inside the world rather than just watching it. The camera here isn't just a tool, it's a narrator, a mood setter, a character of its own. And the way it moves, the way it sees, the way it plays with light and shadow, all of it works together to make every scene hit deeper, harder, and with a lot more elegance than you'd expect from an action-heavy story about immortals. Let's start with the camera angles. This film uses angles to say what words never could. When characters feel isolated, the camera pulls way back, making them tiny against vast, empty landscapes, reminding you just how alone you can feel after living for centuries. But in moments of chaos or confrontation, the camera gets in close, sometimes uncomfortably close. You see every twitch, every tear, every flicker of doubt. In fight scenes, it shifts to a more handheld, gritty style, putting you right in the middle of the blows. But it's not shaky for the sake of style. It's controlled chaos, designed to make you feel the impact of every hit. You don't just watch the action. You experience it. Lighting is another masterstroke. The film moves through different locations and time periods, and the lighting helps anchor you emotionally in each. Cold, bluish tones dominate the present-day scenes, giving a sleek, detached feel that reflects how disconnected the characters have become from the world. But then, flashbacks burst with warm, golden hues or harsh, torchlit shadows, depending on the memory. One moment you're in a medieval cave bathed in firelight, the next you're under flickering neon in a modern underground lab. And these changes don't just look cool, they add emotional depth. The lighting changes how you feel about a scene before anyone even speaks. Framing is sharp and purposeful throughout. When two characters share an important moment, they're often placed symmetrically in the frame, equal but emotionally distant. But as the scene progresses, the camera subtly shifts, sometimes isolating one of them or closing in on a detail like a trembling hand or a scar. It's these little visual cues that add texture to the performances. There are even moments where the frame becomes cluttered, deliberately trapping a character in tight spaces or fractured reflections, hinting at their mental state without a single word of dialogue. And then there are the standout visual moments, the ones that stick with you long after the scene ends. There's a haunting underwater sequence with dreamlike lighting that blurs the line between memory and hallucination. There's a rooftop ambush bathed in moonlight where the shadows do most of the storytelling. And there's an epic wide shot of the entire team moving through a fog-soaked battlefield that looks like it came straight out of a myth. These aren't just moments designed for spectacle, they're poetic, packed with meaning, and timed perfectly within the narrative arc. Atmosphere is another thing the cinematography nails. Whether it's the eerie stillness before a betrayal or the adrenaline rush of a tight escape, the camera creates tension not just by what it shows, but by what it doesn't. It holds shots longer than expected. It moves slower during moments of grief. It pans across empty spaces after a fight to show what's left behind. This kind of patience in cinematography builds emotion, builds suspense, and keeps you on edge. And beauty? Yes, despite the grit and violence, there's a strange, aching beauty to how this film is shot. The rain-slicked streets, the golden glow of sunrise after a brutal night, the slow-motion moments where dust floats in the air around a quiet stair, these aren't just aesthetic flourishes. They're emotional textures. They give the film soul. In The Old Guard too, cinematography isn't just about style, it's storytelling in motion. Every lighting choice, every angle, every frame is part of the larger narrative, helping you feel what the characters feel, see the world as they see it, and understand the weight of immortality not through exposition, but through images burned into your mind. 1. Editing and pacing. Let's talk about the rhythm of The Old Guard too, because this movie has a pulse, and a pretty unpredictable one at that. The editing here is like a carefully timed heartbeat, shifting tempo depending on what the story needs in that exact moment. It's not one of those films that races from scene to scene without giving you a second to breathe, but it's also not afraid to hit the brakes and let a moment land with full emotional weight. The way the film flows is smooth and intentional, and the editing choices keep you locked in without making you feel like you're sprinting just to keep up. The opening sets the tone right away. Instead of dumping exposition or repeating what you already know from the first film, the editing quickly establishes where the characters are now, physically, emotionally, and mentally, through sharp cuts, carefully chosen flashbacks, and seamless intercutting between scenes. It's fast enough to catch your interest, but not so rushed that you feel lost. That balance continues throughout the movie, and it's one of the reasons the pacing feels so confident. Transitions between past and present are one of the standout editing strengths. The story jumps across time, but you never feel jerked around. There are beautifully layered sequences where a character walks through a present-day location while fragments of their past are cut in, not with jarring jump cuts, but with smooth, emotional dissolves or sound-bridged edits. It's the kind of thing that could feel gimmicky in the wrong hands, but here it feels poetic. You understand that for these immortals, the past isn't just behind them, it's with them, always, stitched into everything they do. During the action scenes, the editing picks up speed, but not in that overly choppy, blink-and-you-miss-it kind of way. You actually get to see the choreography. The fights are edited with rhythm and clarity. There's a confidence in letting a shot breathe, letting a punch land, a sword slice, or a fall crash before cutting away. You're not just witnessing action, you're feeling the tempo of it. Quick cuts build tension, but longer takes let the physicality of the moment speak. It's this blend that keeps the adrenaline pumping without losing the emotional connection. But where the editing really shines is in the quieter, emotional scenes. These aren't rushed. The pacing deliberately slows down, often using stillness and silence to amplify tension or sorrow. A conversation between two characters who haven't spoken in centuries? The editor gives it room to burn slowly, building intensity without any flashy techniques. Just raw performance, thoughtful pacing, and well-timed reactions. It's those stretches of silence between lines, the way the camera lingers a moment too long on a character's face. Those choices let the emotions settle in. There are even some clever match cuts and crossfades that link different characters' experiences, showing emotional parallels across space and time. A tear falling in one scene cuts to rain in another. A scream from the past becomes an echo in the present. These editing flourishes aren't just pretty. They deepen the narrative, connecting characters across centuries in subtle but powerful ways. Of course, there are moments when the film picks up to a near breakneck pace, especially in the third act. The editing tightens, the cuts come faster, and the tension spikes. You're jumping between characters, locations, and timelines with intensity, but thanks to how well the pacing has been controlled earlier in the film, you're ready for it. The slow build pays off, and the chaos in the climax feels earned, not overwhelming. The rhythm of the old guard too constantly shifts, sometimes quiet and contemplative, sometimes sharp and explosive. But those shifts never feel random. They're emotionally driven. The editing understands exactly when to linger, when to cut, and when to hit you with a surprise. Whether it's building suspense, highlighting a character's inner conflict, or simply letting you absorb a moment, the pacing always serves the story. It's not just about speed, it's about timing, tension, and trust in the audience to feel it. And that's where the film finds its pulse. 1. Soundtrack and score. Now, let's get into the heartbeat of the old guard 2, the soundtrack and score. Because while the punches land hard and the visuals dazzle, it's the music that slips under your skin and does something deeper. This isn't just background sound, it's a full-blown emotional compass. The score knows exactly when to step into the spotlight and when to disappear into silence, letting a scene breathe. And when it does speak up, it's with weight, purpose, and a whole lot of impact. From the opening scene, the music sets the tone like a whisper in your ear, tense, moody, pulsing underneath everything like a second heartbeat. There's a brooding synth line that runs through the film like a ghost, rising just when things get too quiet. And that's the trick here. The music doesn't just sit on top of the story, it moves with it. It reacts, shifts, and morphs depending on who's on screen, what they're facing, and what kind of emotional storm is brewing beneath the surface. And yes, there are standout moments, compositions that do more than just support the scene. In one powerful flashback, the score pulls you right into the memory with swelling strings that slowly unravel into something raw and personal. It's not just beautiful, it's haunting. There's another track used during a major betrayal that starts off quiet, almost fragile, then builds into a distorted crescendo that mirrors the emotional collapse happening right in front of you. You feel the betrayal not just in the dialogue or acting, but in the sound vibrating underneath it. But here's where it gets really interesting. The film uses silence just as powerfully as it uses music. There are moments, especially in scenes of grief or hesitation, where the score drops out entirely. No background hum, no emotional cue, just silence. And that absence of sound becomes deafening. It's uncomfortable. It makes you lean in, makes you notice every breath, every shift, every pause in the actor's delivery. It's a bold move, and it works because the film has already trained you to expect the music, so when it's gone, you feel that void. There are also recurring motifs tied to specific characters, especially Andy and Quỳnh. Andy's theme has evolved since the first film. It's more stripped back now, reflecting her mortality. It's a quieter piece, heavy with cello and low piano, and it shows up at just the right moments, after a tough decision, during a quiet confession, or right before a major sacrifice. Quỳnh's theme, on the other hand, is eerie and unstable. It floats in and out of scenes with dissonant tones, almost like a warning that something isn't quite right. These character motifs act like emotional signatures. You don't need the film to tell you how they're feeling. You hear it before they even speak. And let's not forget the curated tracks. Yes, there are some sharp music drops during action sequences. Well-placed needle drops that energize the scene without overwhelming it. These are used sparingly, so when a hard-hitting beat kicks in during a slow-motion ambush or a high-stakes escape, it feels earned. It doesn't just make the action feel cooler, it makes it feel alive. The real magic of the score is how naturally it blends with the narrative. It's never trying to steal the spotlight. It's like an invisible character, always present, but never demanding attention. You don't always notice it on the first watch, but that's the point. It's shaping how you feel, where your focus goes, how tense or hopeful or wrecked you feel in any given moment. In The Old Guard 2, the music isn't just music. It's memory. It's tension. It's the sound of time passing for people who can't die. It gives weight to every moment, fills in emotional gaps where words fall short, and sometimes just backs off and lets you sit in the silence. Whether it's a single, echoing note or a full symphonic swell, every beat of the soundtrack serves a purpose, and it makes the film not just something you watch, but something you feel. 1. Themes and messages. Let's dive into the core of The Old Guard 2, because beneath all the bullets, sword fights, and supernatural mystery, this film has something to say, and it says it in ways that sneak up on you. On the surface, it's about immortal warriors fighting evil across centuries, but peel that back and you'll find a rich tapestry of themes woven right into the bones of the story. This isn't just a story about people who can't die. It's a story about what it means to live too long, feel too much, and question everything you thought was eternal. One of the biggest themes it explores is the burden of immortality. Sounds cool in theory, right? Living forever, never aging, always bouncing back. But the film doesn't glamorize it. In fact, it does the opposite. It shows how exhausting it is to carry centuries of memories, mistakes, and loss. Every character wears their history like armor, and sometimes like chains. Andy, now mortal, experiences time differently. Her vulnerability brings a new layer of emotion to the idea of survival. For her, the clock has started ticking again, and that shift adds a whole new urgency to her decisions. Through her, the film digs deep into what makes a life meaningful when you know it's going to end. Then there's the theme of trust and betrayal. These characters have fought side by side for hundreds of years, but that doesn't mean everything's solid. Booker's past betrayal still haunts the group. Quỳnh's reappearance brings with it a storm of emotional reckoning, and suddenly, alliances that once felt unbreakable start to tremble. Trust here isn't easy. It's earned, broken, rebuilt, and tested again. And the film doesn't rush to fix things. It allows characters to question each other, to withhold forgiveness, to sit in that uncomfortable gray area where loyalty and survival don't always align. Identity and purpose are also massive ideas running through the film. Who are you when you've outlived everyone you ever loved? When history keeps repeating itself and your battles never seem to end? Nile's arc embodies this question beautifully. She's still new to this eternal existence, still trying to figure out whether this fight is hers, or if she's just inherited it. Her journey isn't about mastering combat, it's about deciding who she wants to be in this never-ending war. That question of why they fight is just as central as how, and the film lets each character answer it in their own way. Another powerful thread is the trauma of memory. These characters have lived through the worst of human history. War, slavery, betrayal, loss, it's all in their minds, vivid as ever. But the film doesn't treat those memories as backstory. They affect how the characters love, how they fear, how they lead. And for some, like Quỳnh, memory becomes a curse. Her time in isolation has twisted her sense of time and justice. She's not just back, she's broken, furious, and unforgettable. Through her, the film questions how much pain a person can carry before they become someone else entirely. Redemption plays a heavy role too. Booker's storyline is filled with guilt, with a desperate need to make things right, but the old guard too doesn't hand out redemption like candy. It's messy. It's slow. Sometimes it doesn't come at all. And that's part of the message. Immortality doesn't mean unlimited chances. Even if you live forever, the consequences of your choices still follow you. Forgiveness isn't automatic, and rebuilding trust is a battle of its own. Even legacy gets its time in the spotlight. These warriors aren't just fighting to survive, they're fighting for something bigger. They've seen empires fall, revolutions rise, and humanity stumble over itself again and again. And still, they choose to keep going.
Why?
Because even if they can't fix everything, they can protect a few. Save one more life. Push back against the darkness one more time. That idea, that meaning is found in the small victories, not the grand ones, is one of the film's quietest but strongest messages. So while The Old Guard 2 gives you action, suspense, and a supernatural edge, what it's really doing is holding up a mirror to some heavy, beautiful questions. What does it mean to live with loss? How do you keep fighting when the world keeps repeating its mistakes? Can you ever really outrun your past? Can you find peace in an endless life? The film doesn't give easy answers, but it definitely makes sure you're still thinking about those questions long after the credits roll. 1. Visual effects and CGI. Let's talk about the eye candy of The Old Guard 2, the visual effects and CGI. Now, in a story about immortal warriors, centuries of combat, and wounds that heal right in front of your face, you better believe the visual effects team had their work cut out for them. And what they've pulled off here is nothing short of a visual balancing act. It's not about flashy overload, it's about building a world that feels grounded, but just a little off the edge of reality. And that balance is where the magic happens. First up, the healing effects. This is a trademark of the franchise, and in this sequel, they've made it smoother, more visceral, and way more personal. When a character takes a bullet or gets stabbed, it doesn't just disappear. It unravels, knits itself back together, and you can almost feel the pain and the relief in one shot. The effects here are beautifully blended with sound design and practical makeup, so the CGI never looks like a video game glitch. It has weight. You see skin tear, bones shift, wounds close, and none of it feels out of place. It actually adds to the drama rather than distracting from it. Now, the action sequences. This is where practical and digital effects dance together in full force. Explosions, collapsing buildings, fire, water. Some of it's real, some of it's digital, but it's layered so seamlessly you honestly stop trying to tell the difference. The fight scenes are shot on real sets whenever possible, but the VFX team swoops in to extend environments, amplify destruction, and add a little bit of supernatural sparkle when needed. A rooftop chase in the rain? You'll see glistening reflections on wet surfaces, CGI-enhanced lightning in the background, and maybe a sword glowing with ancient energy, all packed into one scene that looks as gritty as it is cinematic. But what really stands out is how the effects are used emotionally. There's a haunting underwater sequence tied to Quỳnh that uses CGI in a way that feels poetic rather than technical. It's not just about showing you something cool, it's about making you feel the weight of her past. The water flows unnaturally, light moves in impossible ways, and the result is this dreamlike visual that hits you right in the chest. That's where this film's effects really shine. They're used as extensions of character and emotion, not just spectacle. There are also new technologies introduced into the storyline. High-tech labs, sci-fi weaponry, digital surveillance systems, all built with sleek, subtle CGI. These aren't over-the-top gadgets that scream for attention. They just exist naturally in the world, integrated into the environments with clean lighting and smart compositing. It makes the world feel advanced but still believable, like this could be 5 minutes into the future if you weren't looking too closely. The CGI-enhanced flashbacks are another big win. When the film jumps through time, medieval wars, ancient cities, forgotten prisons, the visual effects help build these worlds in seconds. Dust, fire, blood, smoke, architecture, it's all layered digitally but framed with enough realism that you get swept into the moment without questioning how it was built. And again, these aren't just backgrounds. The digital landscapes are filled with emotion. They're broken, beautiful, sometimes horrifying, just like the memories they represent. But maybe the best thing about the visual effects is that they know when to step back. Not every scene needs a digital polish. Some moments are raw, intimate, and completely practical. A small fire in a cave, a cracked blade, a scarred face lit by moonlight. These moments are achieved with real props, real fire, real makeup. The VFX team enhances, never overpowers. They understand that restraint can be more impressive than excess. In The Old Guard 2, the visual effects aren't just tools, they're storytellers. They build a world where time bends, bodies heal, and emotion lingers in the air. Whether it's a subtle digital detail or a full-blown supernatural set piece, the effects are always working in service of the story. They make the immortal feel real. They make the impossible feel human. And they make sure you're never just watching, you're right there inside it. 1. Set design and locations. Let's step into the physical world of The Old Guard 2, because this isn't just a movie that travels through time and continents, it feels like it. The set design and locations don't just serve as backgrounds, they become part of the story, revealing character, history, mood, and even tension without a single word being spoken. What's brilliant is how every corner of this world seems lived in, haunted by past battles, hidden memories, and secrets buried just below the surface. It doesn't matter if it's a crumbling European cathedral or a sleek underground lab. Each place tells a story all its own. The movie opens with a striking change in tone, and you notice it immediately in the setting. We're not stuck in one predictable place. One moment, we're tucked inside a shadowy monastery in the Balkans, with stone walls covered in centuries-old carvings, lit by torchlight and mystery. The next moment, we're dropped into a neon-soaked cityscape pulsing with life and modern corruption. The contrast between the ancient and the ultramodern isn't just cool to look at, it echoes what the characters are going through. They are people from the past trying to survive the future, and the locations mirror that push and pull beautifully. The safe houses are one of the standout features. These aren't typical spy movie lairs. They feel handmade, patched together over generations. There's one in particular, a remote farmhouse buried in snowy silence that becomes a haven for the team, and the details there are exquisite. Weathered wood, scattered weapons, faded maps, and handwritten notes covering old stone walls. It's like a character in itself. The kind of place where warriors would return to after years of battle, hoping for a moment of peace but always ready for war. The production team clearly put love into every dusty book and cracked floorboard, and you feel it. Then there's the lair of the new villain, hidden somewhere deep in the Swiss Alps. It's cold, sterile, and eerily beautiful, like a luxury bunker with secrets in every glass wall. You walk through those halls and sense the weight of twisted ambition. Clinical lighting, minimalist design, and an almost oppressive silence make it feel more like a machine than a place for humans. The way this space is designed instantly tells you everything you need to know about who runs it: calculated, emotionless, powerful. That's smart design. You don't need exposition. The space shows you. Flashback locations are a whole different kind of magic. Whether we're seeing a battlefield in medieval France or a village in colonial-era Asia, the film doesn't skimp. These sets are sprawling, textured, bursting with detail. Muddy streets, weather-worn armor, blood-stained banners, everything looks like it's been through real time and war. And when the story dips into ancient dungeons or long-forgotten temples, the atmosphere shifts. Everything gets darker, wetter, more claustrophobic. These places aren't just historically accurate, they feel mythic. It's like walking through a dream made of stone and shadow. Props and set dressing are where things get really intimate. You'll notice that each character's space, whether it's a room, a desk, or even a backpack, tells you about who they are. Andy's weapons are laid out with ritualistic precision. Nile's quarters still show signs of her trying to find her place, bits of her old life blended with gear she's just learning to trust. Even the vehicles they use are chosen for personality as much as practicality. A beat-up military truck says one thing, a slick black SUV says something very different. It's storytelling through stuff, and it's done with such subtle care that you might not even notice until your second viewing, but it's all there, quietly building depth. And yes, there are big, bold, cinematic moments that push the set design into spectacle territory. A cliffside fortress, a firelit courtyard under siege, a bridge collapse mid-combat. But these scenes never feel hollow or fake because the groundwork has been laid in every small, tangible detail. The production design team clearly treated every brick, every shadow, every sliver of moonlight like it mattered. And the result is a world that doesn't just support the story, it enriches it. In the Old Guard too, every location is layered with history, emotion, and energy. Whether you're staring out across a battlefield, creeping through a candlelit crypt, or just watching someone patch a wound in a back alley hideout, the space around them speaks volumes. You're not just watching these immortals move through the world. You're walking right alongside them, feeling the chill of the wind, the grit of the dirt, and the weight of 1,000 years in the walls. 1. Dialogue and script. Let's dive into the heartbeat of the Old Guard 2, its dialogue and script. This is where immortal warriors don't just fight with swords and guns, but with words that cut just as deep. In a story stretched across centuries and scarred by battle, the way these characters speak says everything about who they are, where they've been, and what they've lost. And the script knows it. It's sharp when it needs to be, quiet when it hurts the most, and always aware that sometimes the weight of 1,000 years can be carried in just one line. The best part? The dialogue never feels overcooked. These characters might be ancient, but they don't talk like dusty relics. They sound grounded, modern, and human. You get that rare mix of battle-hardened wisdom and dry humor, the kind that only comes from living through heartbreak, wars, and centuries of watching the world repeat its mistakes. Andy's lines still carry that blend of authority and weariness. Every sentence feels like she's balancing on the edge of exhaustion and purpose. When she speaks, you listen not just because she leads the team, but because you feel the cost behind her words. Nile, still the newcomer to Immortality, brings a fresh voice to the team, and her dialogue reflects that transition beautifully. You hear it in her defiance, her confusion, her jokes, and her slowly growing understanding of what it means to live forever. Her conversations with the older immortals are some of the most engaging in the film. The script uses these moments not just to explain lore or world building, but to peel back emotional layers. When she challenges Andy or questions the team's code, you're getting real character dynamics, not just exposition dressed as dialogue. There are also some standout one-liners, the kind that will absolutely echo in your head after the credits roll. Some are grim. Some are funny. Some are unexpectedly poetic. One line, muttered by Booker during a particularly tense moment, perfectly captures the emotional fatigue of being ageless. Time doesn't heal. It just forgets where it hurts. It's not just clever, it lands. It says more in 8 words than a 5-minute monologue could. That's the kind of writing this film leans on. Impactful, lean, and built to hit you fast and leave a bruise. Then there's the banter, because yes, even in a movie packed with trauma and action, there's room for levity. The group dynamics shine brightest in those quick back and forths, the kind of natural, unscripted feeling lines that make you believe these people have fought side by side for centuries. It's not just jokes for the sake of it, it's character-based humor. The kind that reminds you these aren't just warriors, they're a dysfunctional, loyal, immortal family. There's teasing, there's sarcasm, and there's a kind of quiet understanding that comes through when they speak without saying everything out loud. That kind of restraint in writing is a skill. The script also uses silence masterfully. Some of the most powerful moments are wordless, where a character looks, reacts, pauses, and the script trusts the audience to fill in the blanks. That confidence is what elevates the writing. It knows when to speak, and it knows when to let the story breathe. In more intense scenes, the dialogue tightens. Threats are delivered with terrifying calm. Confessions are whispered like confessions to ghosts. Emotional moments are written with a raw, unpolished tone. No melodrama, no speechifying, just simple truths said out loud. And when new characters are introduced, their voices feel distinct. You don't get generic villains or cardboard allies. Everyone has their own rhythm, their own vocabulary, their own emotional temperature. The screenwriters also layer in subtle world-building through everyday conversation. They never stop to give you a history lecture. Instead, the script lets the past bleed into the present through fragments of memory, passing mentions, and cryptic lines that make you lean in closer. It rewards attention without ever slowing down the momentum. In The Old Guard too, the script does what all good scripts should. It gives the characters a voice that feels lived in, layered, and real. Whether they're whispering regrets in the dark, trading jabs mid-battle, or saying goodbye in ways only immortals can understand, the words never feel like they're just sitting on a page. They move, they hit, they matter. And that's what makes the dialogue so memorable. It's not just about what's said, but about everything that's hiding underneath. 1. Genre execution. When it comes to genre, The Old Guard 2 doesn't just check boxes. It slices through them with a centuries-old battle axe, and then sets them on fire for good measure. This is a film that knows exactly what it is, a high-concept, immortal warrior action thriller with deep emotional roots and a sci-fi edge. But instead of playing it safe, it leans into everything that made the first one special and stretches its legs even further across genre territory. You think you're stepping into just another action movie, but what you get is a layered blend of supernatural myth, gritty realism, sharp humor, philosophical drama, and unapologetically brutal fight choreography. Let's start with the action, because that's what hits first. And it hits hard. This isn't the slick, over-choreographed kind of action where everyone lands with a clean pose. It's messy, desperate, bone-crunching combat from warriors who've died thousands of deaths and learned from every single one. The genre demands tension and spectacle, and the film delivers that in spades, but it also remembers that you've seen explosions and slow-mo flips a million times before. So instead, it goes for fights that mean something. Every punch, every bullet, every sword strike carries weight because you care about the people behind them. And when they bleed, they don't just regenerate, they remember it. But here's where it gets interesting. While most action thrillers might pause for breath with a few emotional beats, The Old Guard 2 does the reverse. It's built on emotion and memory, and action erupts when those feelings finally overflow. So you get long, quiet stretches where the genre shifts into something almost introspective. It becomes a character study about regret, identity, loneliness, and then just when you're lost in the weight of it all, bam! Immortals crash through a rooftop and the camera dives straight into the chaos again. That rhythm keeps the film alive. It never settles too long into one tone. It moves, it changes, it mutates. Just like its characters. And while many genre films drown in cliches, especially when dealing with themes like revenge, betrayal, or redemption, this one sidesteps those traps by making the familiar feel personal. Yes, there's betrayal. But it isn't cartoonish. It's layered, born of pain, and carried out with tears in the eyes. Yes, there's a chosen one dynamic quietly forming, but it never feels forced. It's more about legacy than prophecy. And yes, there's a team on a mission vibe, but they're not a group of stereotypes. They're battle-worn souls trying to figure out if what they're doing still matters. The supernatural elements are also handled in a grounded, almost clinical way. No flashy neon magic or exposition dumps, just the constant, haunting presence of immortality. The film doesn't over-explain how or why these people don't die. It focuses on what that condition feels like. That's where it flips the script. In most action fantasy hybrids, immortality is a cool trick. Here, it's a curse. That thematic subversion is what keeps the genre execution fresh. You don't walk away thinking about how awesome the fight was, though you definitely will. You walk away thinking about what it cost. Humor, when it comes, is dry, dark, and deeply rooted in character. It's not there for a laugh track, it's survival instinct. It's how these characters cope with outliving everyone they've ever loved. And that makes it hit even harder. There's a particular moment where a character cracks a one-liner right after a brutal takedown, and it doesn't land like a Marvel-style wink. It lands like, "This is how I keep from breaking." So, does the old guard too stick to genre conventions? Sure. It's got the globe-trotting missions, the stylish kills, the anti-heroes in trench coats, and the moody flashbacks. But it uses those as a foundation, not a limit. It respects the genre, but it doesn't bow to it. It knows when to play by the rules and when to burn the rulebook. And in doing that, it becomes something more than just an action thriller. It becomes a story about time, trauma, survival, and connection, told through bullets, blood, and beautiful, haunting silence. 1. Social and cultural commentary. The Old Guard 2 doesn't just entertain. It sneaks up and stares you in the face with some weighty reflections on the world we live in. And it does it smartly, without waving a moral flag or tossing in lectures that take you out of the story. This sequel, like its predecessor, understands that when your characters have lived for centuries, they've seen the best and worst of humanity over and over again. And that perspective is where the film finds its sharpest commentary. Right from the beginning, there's a strong undercurrent of commentary on war, exploitation, and how societies have always been built on violence, often justified in the name of progress. These immortals have fought in so many conflicts, across so many empires, that they don't see battles as victories anymore. They see the patterns. The same mistakes, the same thirst for control, the same systems that chew people up. That theme quietly pulses through nearly every decision the characters make. Whether it's Nile questioning why they're still fighting at all, or Booker wrestling with his guilt over how his actions impacted innocent people, the film uses its supernatural concept to reflect very real-world questions. Who gets to decide what's right? Who profits from suffering? And what does it mean to do good when the world keeps rewriting the rules? The story also leans into global power dynamics and the commodification of the human body, especially when it comes to science and medicine. There's a sinister subplot involving corporate interests hunting the immortals not just to study them, but to own their biology. And that's where the film's commentary really bites. The idea of turning immortality into a product is chilling because it mirrors the very real-world obsession with monopolizing health, technology, and even life itself. The villain here isn't just power-hungry. He's a mirror of unchecked capitalism, dressed in lab coats and wielding legal documents instead of weapons. It's slick, and it hits a nerve. There's also a quiet but powerful commentary on isolation and identity. These characters are scattered across the world, rooted in different cultures and times, but they're all constantly displaced. Their immortality makes them outsiders, not just to society but often to themselves. Nile, for example, is a young Black woman who once served in the U.S. military and now finds herself part of this ghost-like family that doesn't operate by any rules she's ever known. Through her eyes, we get reflections on what it means to serve, to belong, and to find your voice when you feel like history is happening to you instead of with you. Her struggle isn't exaggerated. It's deeply human. And it adds texture to the film's broader exploration of power, oppression, and legacy. And then there's the relationship between Andy and Quỳnh, a quietly radical thread that continues to explore themes of love, betrayal, grief, and trauma through a lens rarely given this much depth in action cinema. It doesn't feel tokenized or performative. Their dynamic isn't labeled, it's just lived. It's complicated, layered with centuries of emotion, and it refuses to fall into easy stereotypes. That's cultural commentary through character, and it works because it trusts the audience to feel it without being spoon-fed. Even in its visual design and world-building, the film drops subtle hints at the decay of institutions, abandoned churches, scorched villages, corporate bunkers built like prisons. Every location feels like a reminder that civilizations rise and fall, but the power struggles remain the same. It's all presented through story and atmosphere, not as agenda-driven messages, but as natural consequences of the lives these characters have led. In the end, The Old Guard too doesn't shout its social or cultural commentary. It weaves it into the blood, the dialogue, the scars, and the silence between fights. It knows that the most effective messages are the ones you don't even realize you've absorbed until long after the credits roll. 1. Audience engagement. The Old Guard too knows exactly how to hook its audience and keep them strapped in for the ride, emotionally, mentally, and even physically at times, because there are moments where you genuinely find yourself tensed up, waiting to see what happens next. From the very first scene, the film drops you into a world that's not just dangerous and mysterious, but intensely personal. It doesn't waste time on filler. Every moment feels like it matters. Every look exchanged between characters, every sudden betrayal, every memory that surfaces like a ghost from the past. Whether you're a fan of quiet emotional beats or edge-of-your-seat action, there's something here to grab hold of your attention and not let go. There are scenes that genuinely catch you off guard. Whether it's a shocking twist, an unexpected return of a long-lost character, or a brutal emotional confrontation, the film throws emotional curveballs that hit hard. And these aren't just thrown in for shock value. They land because the characters are deeply developed and the audience is already invested in their histories, relationships, and inner battles. When Andy breaks down, or when Nile finally snaps and lets her emotions boil over, it doesn't just move the story forward, it sends a ripple through the audience. You feel it. But the emotional engagement isn't limited to tears or heartbreak. There are moments of real warmth too. Quiet banter between team members, unexpected moments of humor that cut through the tension like a breath of fresh air. These are the little details that make the characters feel like real people, despite their immortality. It makes you want to spend time with them outside the missions. And that's the kind of connection that gets audiences to come back for repeat viewings, not just to rewatch the explosions, but to revisit the people. Then there's the thrill factor. The Old Guard too knows how to build action scenes that genuinely get the heart racing. Not just because things are blowing up or swords are flying, but because the stakes feel real. Every character could fall. Every plan could fail. The tension is built not on spectacle alone, but on the emotional investment you've developed scene by scene. And the editing and pacing do a brilliant job of stretching out that suspense just long enough to make you lean forward in your seat. And let's not ignore the discussion factor. After the credits roll, this isn't a movie you just forget. It invites you to think. There are questions about morality, about what it means to live forever, about loyalty and trust and justice. Viewers come away wanting to unpack character decisions, theorize about what's next, and debate whether certain actions were justified. It's the kind of story that lives on in forums, in group chats, in late-night conversations, because it gives you something to chew on long after the action has stopped. The visuals are memorable, the emotions are potent, and the characters stay with you. You might come for the action, but you stay for the emotional complexity and the themes that sink deeper with each viewing. And whether you're shouting at your screen, holding your breath during a tense showdown, or wiping away an unexpected tear, The Old Guard too manages to create that rare cinematic magic where audiences aren't just watching a film, they're experiencing it. 1. Comparisons to similar films. When you stack The Old Guard 2 up against other films in the Immortal Warrior meets Modern World genre, it definitely swings with some heavy punches and occasionally lands a knockout. Think about the first Old Guard movie, then mix in the brooding mythology of Highlander, the gritty team dynamics of X-Men, and the globe-trotting covert chaos of Mission Impossible, but with its own very distinct flavor. This sequel isn't just riding on the success of the first film, it's digging deeper, swinging wider, and pushing into much darker and more intimate territory. Where most sequels either go bigger or louder, The Old Guard 2 decides to get smarter and sharper. Compared to the first film, this sequel feels like it matured a few decades overnight. It's still packed with action, yes, but there's a richer emotional current running beneath the surface. Where the first installment gave us introductions and rules of the world, this one strips away the armor and explores the bruises underneath. Think of it as the Logan to the first film's X-Men. It's more reflective, more character-driven, and not afraid to get uncomfortable. The idea of immortality is no longer cool, it's weighty and often tragic. And that emotional gravity is something you don't get as deeply in most other action franchises. Now, when you zoom out and start comparing it to big mainstream franchises like John Wick, The Matrix, or Atomic Blonde, you'll see The Old Guard 2 isn't trying to outstyle them with glossy choreography or neon-soaked visuals. Instead, it's carving its own path through grit, heart, and timeless tragedy. Unlike John Wick's ballet of bullets or The Matrix's digital spectacle, this film leans into a more grounded, brutal kind of combat. Fights feel heavy, personal, and purposeful. Blood is spilled not for visual flair, but for narrative consequence. That's a massive difference in how it engages the viewer. Compared to something like Eternals, another story about ageless warriors walking through human history, The Old Guard 2 feels far more intimate and emotionally resonant. It doesn't try to mythologize its characters with gods and cosmic grandeur. Instead, it makes them feel painfully human, even while they're surviving centuries of violence. There's no divine mission, just the burden of survival. And that honesty makes it more powerful than many big-budget, effects-heavy blockbusters that try to tell similar stories. Even within Netflix's own catalog of action films, The Old Guard 2 stands apart. It's more layered than Extraction, less pulpy than Red Notice, and more emotionally rooted than Six Underground. There's a clear desire, here not just to entertain, but to mean something, to say something about life, legacy, pain, and identity. That intent gives the film a kind of timeless weight that most genre entries can't quite touch. And if you're comparing director Victoria Mahoney's take here to Gina Prince Bythewood's vision from the first movie, the shift is clear but respectful. Mahoney doesn't reinvent the world, she intensifies it. The tone is slightly darker, the visuals moodier, and the characters feel even more fractured and real. She adds her signature touch with tighter suspense, more nuanced character beats, and a heavier sense of looming fate. It's the kind of directorial shift that doesn't feel like a departure, but rather a deepening of everything that came before. In short, The Old Guard 2 doesn't try to be a carbon copy of what's already out there. It walks through familiar territory, secret missions, tragic heroes, moral dilemmas, but it does so wearing its own armor, battle-worn and bleeding, but still standing tall. Whether you're watching it as a sequel, as part of a larger genre, or as a standalone story, it brings something different to the table: raw emotion, grounded spectacle, and characters that linger long after the credits roll. The Old Guard 2 doesn't just wield swords and shootouts, it wields symbolism like a weapon, subtle but sharp, embedded in the very fabric of its storytelling. On the surface, it's a high-octane action thriller about immortal warriors battling through centuries of violence, but tucked beneath the gunfire and flashbacks are metaphors and motifs that speak volumes about humanity, time, trauma, and identity. The most recurring image throughout the film is that of mirrors and reflections. Characters are often framed beside or in front of reflective surfaces, not just for aesthetic flair, but to constantly hint at internal conflict. These warriors, centuries old, are always looking at themselves, wrestling with who they once were versus who they've become. Andy, especially, is often bathed in half-light or caught in fractured reflections, symbolizing her fractured sense of self. She is no longer the unshakable leader she once was, and the visual metaphor reinforces her uncertainty and fading sense of purpose. Another potent symbol is water, which shows up in multiple emotionally charged scenes. It represents both healing and drowning, immortality as both salvation and curse. One key moment involves a character submerging themselves, and it's not just about hiding or escaping. It's a metaphor for rebirth, for shedding old pain and surfacing into something new. Yet in other scenes, rain falls during moments of betrayal or loss, linking water to sorrow and inevitability. It's a reminder that time, like water, never stops flowing, and these characters are caught in the current, powerless to stop it. Weapons, too, carry deep symbolism. They aren't just tools of combat, they're extensions of each character's history and personality. Nile's modern rifle clashes with Andy's centuries-old axe, not just visually, but thematically. It's a clash of eras, values, and identity. Every fight scene becomes more than just physical. It becomes a dance between the past and the present, memory and survival. Even the way the weapons are handled shifts depending on the emotional context of the scene, giving them narrative weight beyond their immediate use. The film also makes use of recurring visual motifs like scars, both physical and emotional. Immortals may heal from wounds, but the psychological scars are repeatedly emphasized through flashbacks, hesitant silences, or lingering glances. These unhealed traumas act as invisible threads that tie the characters together. They're symbols of the emotional weight that immortality doesn't erase. The longer they live, the more they carry, and the film makes a point of showing how some wounds, like betrayal or grief, never fully fade. The concept of doors and thresholds pops up, too. Characters often stand on the edge of places, in doorways or between light and shadow. These visual cues suggest transitions, crossing from one life to another, from denial to acceptance, from vengeance to healing. For immortals stuck in a loop of endless time, these thresholds are symbolic of the rare, precious moments where change becomes possible. When a character hesitates at a threshold, it's not just about entering a room, it's about stepping into a new mindset or moral territory. And then there's the metaphor of sleep and dreams. Several characters reference dreams, what they remember, what they wish they could forget. Sleep becomes a symbol of peace they can never fully attain. They don't age, but they aren't truly awake to the present either. This liminal existence is emphasized through dreamlike sequences or hazy memories that blur into current events. It's not just narrative, it's visual poetry, pointing to the way the past constantly haunts them. Ultimately, The Old Guard 2 isn't just about immortality in a literal sense. It's a layered exploration of what it means to carry history in your bones, to be trapped by time, to fight for something when everything around you keeps changing. The metaphors and symbolism aren't flashy or forced. They're woven into the visuals, the dialogue, and the emotional architecture of the film. It's the kind of storytelling that rewards close viewing and invites reflection, making every scene more than just what's on the surface. These warriors don't just fight battles with swords and guns. They fight with ghosts, with guilt, with identity, and with time itself. The Old Guard 2 doesn't just pick up where the first film left off. It digs deeper into the mythology of the immortal warriors and pushes the entire franchise into bolder, more emotionally rich territory. As a sequel, it doesn't play it safe by simply repeating the formula of the first film. Instead, it expands the universe, introduces new threats, revives old conflicts, and explores the consequences of the immortals' past actions in ways that feel both thrilling and meaningful. The events of the first movie, Nile's introduction to the team, Booker's betrayal, and Quỳnh's haunting return, are not just referenced, they're the very foundation upon which this sequel is built. The story doesn't forget anything. It remembers every choice, every loss, every thread left dangling. And in true franchise-building fashion, it weaves those threads into something more intricate, more dangerous, and more emotionally explosive. What's exciting is how the second film embraces the global scope of the Old Guard's world. We're not just watching a group of warriors in the present, we're diving into their centuries-spanning histories. Each character carries the weight of lifetimes, and the Old Guard too uses flashbacks, artifacts, and even personal relationships from the past to pull us deeper into the franchise's lore. You start to feel the scale of their existence. You see how the world has changed around them while they've stayed the same, and how those changes affect their purpose. The continuity between films is smart, intentional, and layered with emotional consequences. Booker's exile at the end of the first movie, for example, is no minor plot point. It becomes a major emotional anchor in the sequel, shaping how alliances are tested and reforged. Then there's the big twist at the end of the first movie, the return of Quỳnh, the immortal who is presumed lost to the ocean for centuries. The Old Guard 2 runs with that twist like a storm. Quỳnh's reappearance doesn't just add another player to the battlefield. It reopens old wounds, challenges leadership, and raises uncomfortable questions about loyalty, revenge, and justice. She isn't just there to add spectacle. She becomes a driving force in the overarching narrative. And the way her past with Andy plays out is full of conflict, complexity, and emotional depth. Suddenly, the team dynamic is more fragile than ever, and the film uses that tension to push the story into unexpected directions. What really sets this sequel apart in the franchise context is its willingness to raise the stakes, not just physically, but morally. It questions what it means to fight for good in a world that keeps changing. It asks whether immortality is a blessing or a curse, not through abstract dialogue, but through character-driven dilemmas. Nile, still the newest member, continues to grapple with her role and what she's sacrificed. The film gives her more agency and development, hinting at a possible shift in leadership and legacy. This isn't just the next chapter. It feels like the story evolving into a new phase, where the past collides with the future in unexpected ways. The franchise's DNA, rooted in action, ancient lore, moral complexity, and found family, is all intact, but everything's elevated. And yes, it also teases what's to come. There are new faces, mysterious forces pulling strings behind the scenes, and hints of a wider war on the horizon. The Old Guard 2 doesn't just continue the saga, it deepens it, complicates it, and makes you hungry for more. Whether you've followed these immortals from the first film or you're jumping in fresh, this installment plants roots for a long-lasting franchise that's not just about action, it's about legacy. The Old Guard 2 comes with a budget that reflects its ambition, and it shows in every frame. While official numbers often remain under wraps with Netflix productions, industry insiders estimate that the sequel cost significantly more than the first film, which was already in the range of $70 million. That increase in spending isn't wasted. You can see it in the scale of the action set pieces, the globe-trotting locations, the upgraded visual effects, and the expanded ensemble cast. The production quality feels richer, slicker, and far more cinematic, with every punch, explosion, and wide shot demanding attention. This time around, Netflix clearly wanted The Old Guard 2 to feel like an even bigger event, something worthy of the hype that's built up since the first film became one of the platform's most-watched titles back in 2020. From pre-release teasers to behind-the-scenes featurettes and exclusive interviews with Charlize Theron and the returning cast, the marketing campaign was a massive effort to recapture that lightning-in-a-bottle buzz. And the audience responded. Within days of release, the film shot up the global charts, trending across multiple countries, dominating social media chatter and sparking tons of theories and discussions about what's next for the Immortal crew. Now, when it comes to box office in the traditional sense, streaming films don't play by the old rules. You won't find The Old Guard 2 topping theater charts because its home is digital. But Netflix has its own way of measuring success, and this sequel seems to have checked all the boxes: high viewership hours, strong retention, and an instant fan response. Analysts point out that the buzz alone may justify Netflix's gamble on an action-heavy franchise. It's not about ticket sales. It's about subscriptions, sustained engagement, and global reach. And by those standards, The Old Guard 2 delivers. What's particularly interesting is how the film's budget supports not just surface-level spectacle, but depth. The money goes into world-building, into building out character arcs, into bringing new cast members into the fold with credibility. It doesn't just burn cash on explosions. It invests in expanding the mythology and grounding it in emotional stakes. So, while we can't measure its financial impact with box office numbers alone, there's no doubt that this sequel was designed to be a blockbuster in spirit and a subscriber magnet in strategy. The real payoff? A more committed fan base and even stronger momentum for future installments. The financial conversation around this movie is less about box office disappointment or domination, and more about strategic success in the new age of digital streaming. If you're gearing up to experience The Old Guard 2, the great news is that you don't have to leave your couch to dive headfirst into the world of immortal warriors and global showdowns. This epic sequel is available exclusively on Netflix, which means no tickets, no lines, no popcorn spills in dark aisles. Just a press of a button, and you're in. It's part of Netflix's big-budget strategy to deliver theatrical-level entertainment straight to your screen, and The Old Guard 2 absolutely fits that bill. Whether you're watching on a smart TV with booming surround sound or curled up with a laptop and headphones, the film is right there at your fingertips, accessible whenever you're ready to jump into the action. And let's talk about impact. For a film that moves across continents, throws massive fight sequences at you, and carries emotional weight behind every bullet and blade, this is a movie that begs for the biggest, crispest screen you've got. You want to feel the rumble of ancient grudges reignited, the sting of betrayal, and the thrill of teamwork that's been honed over centuries. Watching it on a high-definition screen with rich sound can make a world of difference. The action pops, the visuals shine, and the emotional beats hit harder. The mood, the momentum, the moments, they all come alive when you treat it like an event. And if you're thinking of hosting a movie night, even better. This is the kind of film that gets everyone on the edge of their seat. Get your friends, grab some snacks. Maybe even rewatch the first film as a warm-up. That way, you catch every callback, every evolution of the characters, and feel every punch land with the weight of history behind it. There's no theatrical release for this one, no physical disc to chase down in stores, no digital rental window ticking down the minutes. It's pure Netflix, available to stream anytime, anywhere, as many times as you like. Whether you're watching it the day it drops or circling back weeks later for a second viewing, the full force of The Old Guard 2 is just a click away. So clear your schedule, get comfortable,